source then?
Simple. The source of the problem that we are going through today is the government's failure to come up with an economic plan. That's the reason. This government has no economic plan. And I want the youths and women who are listening to this program to listen very carefully. But UPND have no any economic plan. Baribe, zero. Remember, comrade, I used to sit here, Pakona Pano, and we could talk. That these people have no manifesto. And it used to look like I was politicking. 6 months down the line, they have proved that 1, they have no manifesto. 2, they have no any economic plan. The Minister of Finance, Honorable Alexander Musokotwane, is it no Stumbeko Musokotwane? Honorable Stumbeko Musokotwane, I beg your pardon, was asked to say, Bwana, you have no economic plan. How are you going to make Zambia a better place? How are you going to reduce the cost of living? How are you going to create employment? How are you going to increase productivity? His response, and I have it, it was written in News Diggers. He said, it's not like we have a plan written on a piece of paper, no. But we know what we want to do. It's to reduce the debt, to restructure the debt, increase productivity, and create jobs. A minister is telling you that they don't have any written plan. That's a disaster. If I was President Hakainde Sami Hichilema, immediately I would have fired that minister. Immediately, I would have fired the minister, because you can't tell me that the minister says, we don't have a plan written anywhere, but we know what we want to do. I'm a teacher, comrade, by profession. And as a teacher, to teach for 40 minutes, a period of 40 minutes, you need to come up with a lesson plan, written. And the lesson plan is very elaborate. First of all, it will tell you the objectives of the lesson. What are you trying to achieve? And it will spell out to say, by the end of this lesson, pupils must be able, A, to count 1 to 10, B, to write the numbers 1 to 10, C, they should be able to count 1 to 20. And how will they be able to do this? A lesson plan will establish the steps that the teacher and the pupil will engage in, including the exercise they need to do and the examples they need to give and how the marking will be done. A 40-minute program, you draw a lesson plan. Now, this government have said they have no any written economic plan, that their plan is existing in their heads, that they move around, and now we understand why in this government there is no single ministry which seems to know what is going on. If you go to the Ministry of Labor, they are at sea, they are lost, they don't know what is going on. If you go to Ministry of Finance, they are completely lost, they don't know what is going on. If you go to Ministry of Agriculture, it is disaster. They don't even know what is going on. It's because there is no economic plan. And Zambians must be worried that they have put in place a government that does not have an economic plan. Now, the president says he wants to stop the bleeding. Which bleeding is the president talking about? Because first of all, we left a very healthy economy. Our minimum was cheap, our fuel was cheap, our water was cheap, our electricity was cheap, and we have even built modern hospitals, modern schools. We have gone ahead to build infrastructure in communication, in transport, in electricity, in water. We left all those things intact. So what bleeding is he talking about? Of increasing the prices and reducing by 1 kwacha. Let's pick one by one. Fuel. When he was in opposition, he said the PF for fuel is expensive because 1, we are stealing 3 kwacha. They have increased the fuel by over 4 kwacha. Are they stealing that 4 kwacha? He said PF fuel is expensive because PF has got middlemen in the fuel procurement and transportation. Today we want to ask the president, who are those middlemen? And what has he done with those middlemen? Has he removed them? He said the fuel is expensive under PF because they are stealing. What was the first thing that he did when he came into office? The first thing they did as UPND was to lie that the fuel prices, first they increased the fuel prices and lied that the fuel prices had gone up because they had removed subsidies. Subsidies were removed in 2012. There were no subsidies that were removed. They simply removed the waiver that we, a caring government, then had put in place to make sure that we remove tax such as VAT on fuel, excise duty on fuel, and import duty on fuel. That's what we did to reduce the price of fuel. They removed those. And they increased the fuel prices. The next thing, we saw this line, that first we will increase in order to reduce. They increased by 4 kwacha and reduced by 1 kwacha. Increased again by 2 kwacha. Okay? So in the last period of 6 months, fuel prices have gone up to as high as 36% or 9 kwacha within 6 months. We are now being treated to a circus, which is coming from my young brother, Anthony Waria, who is now contradicting his Minister of Finance. He posted on his Facebook page to say the fuel prices are up because the PF left arrears of $727 million. He forgets that the Minister of Finance, Musokotwane Stumbeko Honorable, said the PF only left the arrears of $477 million. And it's not only PF that has left these arrears, comrade. It's all governments across the world. UNIP left arrears for MMD. MMD left arrears for PF. We inherited arrears. We inherited a backlog of 22,000 unpaid retirees. We cleared the 20,000 of them. They only managed 2P. So every government leaves a litany of problems. It's not the first government to have ever have problems. No, every government leaves some form of challenges. But now you can see that they are even failing to know which figures are which. The presidential spokesperson speaking on behalf of the president is saying 727. The minister speaking on behalf of the president and the government is saying 477. They are lying even amongst themselves. The Zambian people don't even know which of the two is the correct figure. Now they have even changed to start saying the latest increment of fuel is as a result of the war in Ukraine and Russia. Comrade, olumuma nama boza, vitu vina kunkala kona soni. War in Ukraine started 12 days ago. The fuel that we are using was imported long before the war in Ukraine started. Long before there was Women's Day and Youth Day. Long before there was even Man U versus Manchester City. Long before this, the fuel we are using is old stock. It's the old consignment. How does the oil, the war in Ukraine and Russia, affect the price of the old stock of fuel that we bought 3 months ago? You can see the level of lying. He says we cannot rebuild what PF destroyed in 10 years. PF employed 24,827 health workers in 10 years. Is that distraction? PF created 7 public universities in 10 years. Is that distraction? PF invested $3.2 billion in the electricity energy infrastructure. Is that a distraction? PF built roads, schools, universities, employed tens of thousands of young men and women. Is that bleeding?
But perhaps, Mr. Mwanza...
No, comrade, we need to be asking him. Now, you see, here is where we are going. And I want the young people, because they are the ones who stood up. Yes, the young people are the ones who stood up, and I want to talk to them. That life will be harder. It will be tougher. Because